Hey guys, I'm Songbird. I'm going to show you guys today the three pieces of sleeping insulation I have here. I'll show you what I started the AT with in 2016, what I changed to in 2017 in the summer, and then what I'm doing this summer here in 2018. Insulation is one of the most important pieces of your kit. It is a safety item. You can't really go out without a sleeping bag. You're going to run into temperatures in the low 40s sometimes on the AT, even in the dead of summer. Picking the right gear means that you're going to be comfortable and safe. As a warning to you guys here, I know that I've tested my current summer kit down to 30 degrees and I feel comfortable with it, but honestly, if you're looking to get into ultralight camping and backpacking, or if you've never backpacked before, I'd say you probably shouldn't go warmer than a 40-degree quilt for summer use and a 30-degree quilt for 3-season use. Obviously, depending on where you are and what time of year it is, the gear that you bring with you will change. So starting off with my first sleeping bag ever, I bought a sleeping bag in college that was made by Marmot, and it was a Trestle 0-degree synthetic bag. As you might imagine, that bag is pretty heavy and very bulky, so I didn't want to even put it on the table here. That 0-degree synthetic bag weighs a total of 84 ounces here on my lighter pack. That's over 5.25 pounds. That's a heavy bag, and I don't use it except in the coldest weather when I'm car camping. I'm looking to replace it with a much lighter down mummy bag option for winter use, but I haven't done that yet. That bag is from like 2012 when I was in college, so yeah, it's old technology and it's heavy. But really though, it still works, and I've brought it with me out on a couple trips. The second bag that I have ever bought was this Rei Flash 30-degree bag. Rei is a store here in the US. This is in a mummy shape and it's a regular size sleeping bag. This bag comes in at 26 ounces and is a much better option for 3-season use. This is an interesting sleeping bag for a couple reasons. One, the zipper sticks all the time and it's left hand, so I have trouble getting out of it. That's kind of a joke. But on a more serious note, this is a hybrid construction sleeping bag, which means that it has both synthetic and down-treated materials in it. The nice thing about that is that the synthetic material underneath you isn't really there to do much. It's just there to kind of seal off the sleeping bag, give you a little bit of warmth, and also really with my setup, I'm more likely to get some water from below than I am from above. So the synthetic on the bottom will do a better job at dealing with wet weather. This bag actually saved my life. I was coming southbound in the 100-mile wilderness from Katahdin on a July 4th start southbound. And I hiked all day in some rain, and the plan was for my big group of 8 people to all meet up at Antlers campsite on a nice lake in the 100-mile wilderness, like about halfway through. I did a 24-mile day and it rained all day. I left at about 4:30 in the morning when it got light. It gets light very early there in the summer, and it began to drizzle almost immediately. I had my long johns on and I had my rain gear on, my full rain suit, and I got cold anytime I stopped walking. So knowing that my friends would meet me at the campsite, I pushed through and managed to get to Antlers, only to find that there was not a lean-to. I was expecting for there to have been a shelter based off of what I had heard and seen in the guidebook. Since there wasn't a shelter, I ended up setting up my tent, which was a 2-person tent at the time, in a nice spot that had been cleared out for me by other hikers. The ground was nice and level, and it had already been raining, so I figured that if that area was gonna flood, then it already would have been, soaked. Unfortunately, as I set my tent up, it started to rain even harder. So what ended up happening is as I was loading up my gear into my tent kind of got wet inside, and all of my gear got soaked, including my sleeping bag. I can't tell you how miserably cold and wet this day was. It was in the 40s, and honestly, this is the most dangerous day, the most dangerous thing that's happened to me on trail. Turns out my friends don't show up. They all bailed out in the middle of the day due to the rain. So I end up stripping down out of all my clothes, moving my whole setup onto a big patch of moss so that it wouldn't flood, drying it out as best I could with my shirt, which was already wet, hanging my wet clothes on top of my inner mesh underneath my rain fly, and then getting in this damp sleeping bag completely naked and cooking it dry. I woke up a few hours later. It was still light outside because Maine is ridiculous in the summer with the light. The sleeping bag was dry with the treated Q down and the synthetic material, and I was warm and safe. My clothes finally dried out later the next day, and I waited for all my friends to show up, and I had a nice 0 day at Antlers campsite. I really like this bag, and I'm probably going to keep using it. In the winter and colder months, I like to bring this 30-degree sleeping bag and supplement it with my next piece of insulation by putting that quilt inside of here to make a much warmer setup. I've taken this sleeping bag and this quilt, which I'm about to show you, down to negative 11 degrees wind chill on Roan High Knob, which was probably the coldest conditions I camped in on the entire trail so far. So, real quick before I switch, here's a nice shot of the mummy bag. You see the hood there. It's called a Flash, men's regular. I really like the colors on this bag. It's got a nice pattern inside too. And you got that double zipper. You're down to the foot box. The next piece of sleeping insulation that I actually purchased was a quilt. In 2017, I started northbound again from Hot Springs, where I'd left off with 2 friends to flip up to Maine and hike south around July 4th. The weather was pretty nice, but we had some serious cold spikes and some storms that brought in some snow and ice. We had snow and ice all through the North Carolina-Tennessee border until I got into Virginia. The last day that I had snow was probably around April 15th, and from there the weather changed and got a lot nicer. I went home for a little while, and I came back later in the summer to hike northbound again from near Parisburg, Virginia. When I came out for Parisburg, Virginia, I brought this as my only worn and sleeping insulation, other than my underquilt for my hammock. Switching to a hammock got me down to a 6-pound base weight, and I slept beautifully on an 11-foot Dutchware gear hammock that I can show you guys in a later video. This quilt is a 50-degree hammock gear top quilt. This quilt has a sewn foot box and comes in at a grand total of 10.58 ounces. This is a very light option, and it kept me plenty warm in my hammock at night in the summer. I tried to adapt this 50-degree hammock gear top quilt to my ground sleeping setup, but I found that it was much too narrow because it was designed to be used in a hammock and not on the ground. So I ended up switching from it. But while I used it with my hammock, it was excellent. And I carried this as my only piece of worn insulation in the summer in Virginia as well. On colder nights, I can make use of the elastic and snaps to help wrap the quilt around my torso. I would tuck it all in and get as much coverage out of it as possible, and if I was cold, I could put my rain jacket over it and it would be like wearing a nice little jacket. I found though that wearing this as a body wrap was less than ideal. It's very narrow, and it was hard for me with a sewn foot box to get it to wrap around my body completely. So when I decided to go back to ground sleeping and try to get my base weight even lower, I decided to go and find a quilt that was designed to be worn as a poncho and to find something that would work very well as sleeping insulation for the summer. One of the problems I had with this 50-degree down top quilt from Hammock Gear is that the down will shift off of your chest down to the sides during normal use. You have to sit and flick the down back into the middle. The sewn through baffle construction meant that there were cold lines all the way down from my chest to my legs, though it was minimal, and in warmer weather, 50 degrees and above, it's really not so bad. And getting down into the 40s, it wasn't as warm as I would have liked it to be. And now we get to a really interesting option, my poncho quilt. This is the quilt that I'm going to be using this summer on the Appalachian Trail to finish the last 600 miles. This quilt is part of the reason I've been able to get my base weight down below 5 pounds. The great thing about this quilt is that it can be worn as a poncho, which means that I don't have to bring my 10-ounce jacket in addition to it. This quilt is rated for 50 degrees, but I've tested it down to 30 on the back porch just to make sure that if there's any unexpected cold snaps, I'll at least be safe. This 50-degree top quilt is a Mountain Laurel Designs Spirit 48. I call it a 50-degree quilt just for simplicity's sake. The quilt has a formable foot box that uses very strong Velcro and 3 snaps. I think the snaps are so that you can form the foot box to the length that you want. I have noticed that the Velcro edges down here, or up here at the top of the foot box, kind of poke me a little bit, so I'm thinking about trimming them a little bit. There's a cinch here at the bottom of the bag that allows you to extend the foot box into just a long edge for the foot end. 3 snaps in the middle of the poncho form the head hole. These snaps aren't really hard to undo, but they do a pretty good job of keeping it closed. I got the inside of the poncho in the dark green and the outside of the poncho in black. As much as I like bright colors on trail, Mountain Laurel Designs stated that the darker colors of olive green and black would dry out much more quickly if the quilt had gotten wet and I needed to dry it out in the sunlight. This synthetic construction means that it's a continuous piece of insulation underneath, and there are no sewn baffles and no cold spots. After opening the quilt up, it fits over your head pretty easily, making use of the poncho slot, and the quilt strap in the front allows you to clip the quilt together to finish forming the jacket. I've also been able to fasten the foot box to the Velcro behind me, which allows me to wrap the insulation around my torso much more securely. For my blog, I tested the poncho quilt at 40 degrees Fahrenheit on the front porch. I purposely avoided eating and drinking water and only wore the quilt to see how it would do at 40 degrees. My fingers and toes got a little cold, but I took my arms inside the quilt for a while and my fingers warmed right up. Keep in mind, this test was conducted with no extra food calories, poor hydration, which can make it harder for your body to moderate its own temperature, and I wasn't moving at all, avoiding increasing the amount of body heat that I was producing by moving around. The quilt passed with flying colors, and on trail I'm planning on using my very light OR Helium 2 rain jacket, which I'll show you in another video, if the weather seems like it's going to be cold at the beginning of my hike. I tested this 50-degree poncho quilt on the back porch in 31-degree weather and found it to do very well. This is one of the pieces of gear that I'm most excited about using on the trail this summer, and I can't wait to take some pictures and videos of my sleeping setup out on the Appalachian Trail. Hey guys, thank you for watching the video. Check out the other videos in the series and see what I'm bringing with me on the Appalachian Trail. And if you haven't yet, check out the sub 5 pounds gear list that I posted earlier last week. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.